The morning sky above the Atlantic shimmered in a rare calm, a deceptive peace masking the silent tension of war below. A military transport jet, marked with U.S. Air Force insignia, cut through the pale clouds at 30,000 feet. Inside the cockpit, the hum of engines blended with the rhythmic chatter of radar pings and coded transmissions. The mission was classified, a high-altitude escort operation carrying decorated officers, encrypted cargo, and one civilian passenger whose presence had raised quiet curiosity among the crew. That passenger was Lieutenant Kara Holtgreen. To most aboard, she appeared to be just another technical consultant. Dark flight jacket zipped high, hair tied in a practical braid, headset slung loosely around her neck. But her composure, her way of glancing at the controls, and the faint scarring on her left knuckle told another story. Kara wasn't new to the air. She had once flown combat sorties during the early years of her career, before an accident grounded her indefinitely. Those who knew her name whispered it with respect. She had been one of the youngest test pilots in the Navy's fighter program, and her call sign, Raven 1, still lingered in Air Force memory like a legend that never faded. Now, years later, she sat quietly near the cockpit door, running a thumb across the edge of a silver dog tag she never took off. Outside, the F-22 Raptors, codenamed Falcon 1 and Falcon 2, streaked across the sky in a protective formation. Over the secure comms, their clipped British and American voices occasionally broke through. Falcon 1, holding steady. Falcon 2, visual on the cargo bird. The escort wasn't routine. Intelligence hinted that enemy radar had begun probing near this corridor. Among the passengers sat Colonel John Glenn, the astronaut and veteran pilot whose very name evoked courage. Even retired, his presence aboard gave the mission an aura of calm authority. He spoke softly with the flight crew, reviewing navigation routes and comms encryption. Beside him, a young technician tapped through coded sequences on a black terminal, ensuring that no data leak could expose their flight path. The atmosphere in the cabin was tense but controlled. Kara leaned back, watching condensation streak along the window. For a moment, she let herself remember what it felt like to pull 6 Gs in a dive, the world narrowing to a tunnel of motion and instinct. Her grounding had been a mercy, but it had never felt like peace. She had lived in silence too long, teaching, consulting, advising, but never flying. As the plane crossed into the upper Atlantic corridor, turbulence began to rock the fuselage. A low alarm blinked across the cockpit console, minor at first. The pilot, a steady man in his 40s with years of flight time, adjusted the trim and muttered something about crosswinds. The co-pilot responded with a dry chuckle, then leaned forward to check the gauges. Outside, lightning flickered across the horizon, a storm cell forming earlier than forecasted. Kara noticed it too. Her eyes flicked to the display monitor overhead, pressure drop, wind shear rising. Her instincts, dulled but not forgotten, told her something wasn't right. She started to rise, but the captain gave her a reassuring nod. "Just a bump, ma'am. We'll ride it out." Minutes later, as the aircraft leveled, silence filled the cabin again, but it wasn't the comfortable kind. The co-pilot's voice cut through the intercom, uneven now. "Captain? You all right?" Then came a thud, heavy, sudden. The aircraft tilted slightly to the left. Warning tones began to sound in the cockpit. Kara was already moving. The F-22s, still flying close escort, called in. "Transport lead, your altitude's dipping. Confirm status." No answer. "Transport lead, respond." Still silence. She reached the cockpit door. The co-pilot turned, pale-faced, calling for help. The pilot was slumped forward over the controls. Outside, the storm opened in a blaze of lightning, and the escort pilot's next words came sharp, urgent, almost disbelieving. "Control, we've lost lead pilot response. Who's on that plane?" Kara pushed the co-pilot aside, slid into the left seat, and gripped the yoke like an old memory clawing back to life. When her voice came over the open comms, steady and cold, the sky seemed to still. "This is Raven 1, taking command." And in that moment, at 30,000 feet, every F-22 pilot listening froze. The cockpit shook under the weight of turbulence as lightning ripped through the clouds. The instrument panels flickered, warning lights pulsing in red and amber like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Lieutenant Kara Holtgreen steadied her grip on the controls, her jaw locked, voice calm but urgent. Falcon 1, Falcon 2, this is Raven 1. We've lost our pilot. I'm stabilizing the aircraft. The response came after a stunned pause. Raven 1, confirm? Say again? The disbelief in Falcon 1's voice was unmistakable. Kara didn't repeat herself. She pulled back gently on the yoke, leveling the aircraft as another wave of turbulence struck. The co-pilot, pale and trembling, began checking vitals on the unconscious captain, his voice shaking as he confirmed, "He's not responding. Pulse weak." Outside, the storm wasn't the only threat. A low radar tone cut through the static, enemy lock-on warning. The crew exchanged panicked looks. Somewhere below, an unidentified signal had tracked them. Kara's eyes darted to the defense console. Falcons, we've got radar contact. Possible hostile. Falcon 2's voice broke through the comms. Copy that, Raven 1. We've got movement below. 2 bogies rising fast. We'll intercept. The F-22s peeled away from formation, diving into the clouds, afterburners flaring like blue comets. Kara focused on keeping altitude, fighting the storm as the aircraft swayed like a ship in high seas. The cabin behind her filled with nervous murmurs. Colonel John Glenn steadied himself in the aisle, gripping a support rail. "Lieutenant, what's our status?" He called out. 2 possible hostiles inbound, sir," she replied without turning. "We're maintaining altitude, but we've lost auto-stabilization. Manual control only." Glenn's calm voice steadied the younger soldiers. "Then we trust the pilot who's flying." His words silenced the fear, but Kara felt the pressure rising. This was no simulator, no test flight. This was survival. The radar pinged again, faster now. "Missile lock," she muttered. Her hand hovered over the countermeasure switch. Outside, thunder drowned out everything until Falcon 1's voice returned. "Raven 1, break left, now!" She yanked the controls left. The entire aircraft lurched violently, sending loose items flying through the cabin. The missile streaked past their right wing, missing by a heartbeat. A second later, the shockwave rocked the plane again. Screams echoed from the cabin. Sparks burst from a side panel. "Damage report," she shouted. "Right engine hit, minor fire!" The co-pilot answered, coughing from the smoke. Kara reached across and triggered the extinguisher system. Flames died, leaving only the smell of burned metal. She could feel sweat running down her temple. The storm outside had turned vicious, as if the sky itself was against them. Then, silence. No radar ping, no missile warning. Nothing but the roar of the engines and her pounding heart. Falcon 2's voice broke in, strained but triumphant. "Hostile 1 down, second one disengaged. You're clear. For now." Kara exhaled slowly, but something still didn't feel right. The navigation system had gone dark, and they were drifting off course, deeper into contested airspace. "Falcon, we've lost nav." "I'm flying blind." "Copy that, Raven. We're rerouting you manually." "Hold heading 095, but then..." Comms crackled. Static filled the line. Falcon 1's voice broke apart mid-sentence. "Raven." "Enemy, jamming," and then it was gone. Kara slammed her fist lightly against the console. They were alone again. Storm above, unknown territory below. The co-pilot looked at her, fear in his eyes. "We can't land in this, Lieutenant." "We'll never make it." She looked at him sharply. "We don't have a choice. We make it, or no one does." Colonel Glenn stepped closer, bracing himself against the bulkhead. His expression was calm, almost proud. "You remind me of the ones who flew when there was no certainty of return," he said softly. Kara gave a faint nod, tightening her harness. "That's the only way anyone ever makes history, sir." The aircraft jolted again as wind slammed against its wings. She adjusted course manually, fighting the storm with muscle memory she thought she'd lost. Each second stretched into eternity. Outside, faint shapes moved within the clouds, flashes of light, or maybe something more. For a moment, Kara thought she saw another fighter's silhouette, unfamiliar, closing fast. Her hand instinctively moved to the defense panel again. "Falcon 2, confirm visual contact?" she asked. No response, only static. Then the radar lit up once more, red this time. Multiple blips. She swallowed hard, her voice steady. All stations, prepare for evasive maneuvers. We're not done yet. The storm roared louder, lightning painting her face in white light as she pulled the yoke into a sharp climb. Behind her, the passengers held their breath, and every heartbeat in the aircraft aligned with hers. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. The aircraft shuddered violently as the altimeter spun downward. Kara fought the controls, her arms burning with the effort. Every warning light on the console was flashing. Fuel leak, engine instability, hydraulic pressure low. The air around them was chaos, wind screaming, lightning slashing across the sky, and in the distance the faint echo of enemy radar trying to reacquire them. The last missile had missed, but the storm was still their most relentless opponent. Colonel John Glenn steadied himself against the frame of the cockpit, his weathered face calm but grave. "You've done everything you can, Lieutenant," he said quietly. "If we don't find clear skies soon—" "We will," Kara interrupted, her voice sharp but steady. "We're not going down today." The co-pilot looked to her for direction, eyes wide with exhaustion and disbelief. Kara forced herself to breathe evenly. She'd been here before, different war, different cockpit, but the same fight for control between chaos and courage. Her mind moved like clockwork. Reroute power, adjust trim, shift fuel flow. The engines roared again, less violently this time. A faint flicker of sunlight pierced the clouds ahead. "Falcon 2, this is Raven 1, she called into the comms, voice strained. "If you read me?" "We're still flying, static." Then a faint crackle. "Raven 1. Copy, you're off course. We're tracking your beacon." Relief washed through her chest. They weren't alone. The F-22's distant silhouette appeared ahead, a silver shape cutting through the storm. Falcon 2 guided them slowly toward a break in the cloud layer. The world below came into view. Rolling waves of the North Atlantic, and in the distance a small Allied airstrip on a rocky coast. But there was no time to celebrate. The right engine sputtered again, coughing smoke. The co-pilot shouted, "We're losing it!" Kara made her decision instantly. "Prepare for manual descent." Colonel Glenn placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You sure you can do this?" She smiled faintly, eyes locked on the horizon. "I was born to do this." She guided the transport into a shallow dive, using wind resistance to slow the descent. The landing gear refused to deploy fully, another system failure. They would have to skid it in. The co-pilot braced. The crew behind held on to anything solid. At 1,000 feet, the F-22 pilot's voice returned, urgent. "Raven 1, you're coming in too fast." "Copy," she replied. "But it's the only way we touch down in one piece." The runway came into view, short, wet, and surrounded by jagged terrain. Kara adjusted the angle, her breath steady. The impact came hard, metal screaming, sparks flying across the tarmac as the aircraft slid. The left wing clipped a light tower, tearing away part of the structure. The fuselage spun before grinding to a halt just meters from the edge of a ravine. Silence followed. For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, voices began to stir behind her. Groans, coughing, relief. The co-pilot turned to her, stunned. We're alive." Kara exhaled and unbuckled her harness. "Check on everyone. Go." Outside, the F-22 circled low, ensuring no enemies were nearby. Rain fell lightly, hissing against the scorched metal of the fuselage. Kara stepped out into the open air, legs trembling from exhaustion. Colonel Glenn followed, his eyes filled with quiet admiration. "You brought them home," he said simply. She shook her head. "We all did." Emergency crews arrived minutes later, rushing to evacuate the injured. One of the medics called out, "Lieutenant Hultgreen, command wants confirmation. They said your call sign's been inactive for over a decade." Kara looked toward the horizon where the F-22 still flew, faint streaks of silver in the clouds. "Tell them it's active again," she replied softly. News of the rescue spread quickly through the channels, a grounded pilot returning to flight in the middle of chaos, saving an entire crew under impossible odds. But Kara didn't stay for the cameras or the medals. By the time reporters arrived at the base, she was gone, reassigned quietly to a recovery program for pilots who'd been lost to trauma or injury. Weeks later, Colonel Glenn stood before a row of cadets at an air academy telling the story of Raven 1. His voice carried the weight of truth and pride. "Courage isn't born in calm skies," he said. "It's born in storms, when one voice refuses to give up, even when the world is falling apart." The cadets listened in silence, and somewhere on a distant runway, a lone jet lifted into the morning air, its pilot wearing a helmet marked with a single emblem, a silver raven in flight. The legacy of Raven 1 lived on, not as myth, but as proof that some call signs never fade, even when the storm tries to silence them.